To our viewers and listeners, welcome. This debate is presented by the City Club of Corvallis and the Corvallis Advocate. The City Club of Corvallis is a volunteer-run nonprofit organization that seeks to present a diversity of viewpoints and a constructive dialogue. The Advocate offers fresh daily hyperlocal news for Corvallis, town halls and debates, and an extensive weekly events calendar. I'm Steve Schultz of both the Corvallis Advocate and City Club of Corvallis, and co-moderating with me is Helen Higgins, an active community volunteer and previous City Club board member. For this debate, Ward 7 debate, we have on hand incumbent Paul Schaefer. We have challengers Andrea Bybee and Roy Rubin. Helen?
All right, good evening, everybody. We're going to start out with our first question, and Paul, will have you begin. If you could please introduce yourself and tell us what are your primary reasons for seeking re-election. You have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Let me just start by saying thanks to the audience for joining us, and thanks to Steve and Helen for organizing this, the City Club and Advocate for putting this on, and thanks to the other two candidates for your interest in local government. Briefly, I got involved in city government about 5 years ago. After I retired, I figured it was kind of time to give back to the community that had done so much for my kids and my family and me. I was first elected to City Council in 2019. I've been reelected twice since then. I'm currently City Council President. I'm running again for a couple of reasons. First of all, I want to continue to serve Ward 7 and the city of Corvallis as a city councilor. Probably the biggest reason for running again is because there's a lot going on and there's a lot of unfinished business in front of the city right now. We're in the midst of developing a strategic plan that I was one of the instigators of. We're doing a lot of planning to improve city infrastructure, our streets and plumbing, and we're closing in on making some critical decisions about new facilities for the city, what to build, in what order, whether to build, and how to pay for it. And so I want to be able to, first of all, see those things through to completion, or at least to decisions. And I hope I can put to good use the time and effort and expertise and the things I've learned from city staff and others as part of this conversation and discussion and planning the last 2 or 3 years. So that's an important thing for me, is to follow through on what's going on. And with that, I'll stop for now.
Great, thank you, Paul. Andrea, please introduce yourself and tell us why you are running for City Council.
Thank you. Andrea Bybee. I am running for City Council. Was never in my plans, but as I got more involved with local politics over the last year, I realized that there was a need for more. I feel a sense of urgency around decision making and around kind of more bold and innovative problem solving for the city, and as we prepare for what's coming our way. I guess I'm recovering from monitoring the hurricane in Florida and just thinking about everything that I feel like requires some more bold decision making around it, and just preparing the city and all of us here for whatever confronts us. And when I first attended a city council meeting last year, it was for something unexpected that I assumed would be kind of a softball request around, condemning genocide and apartheid in Palestine. And instead, it became really clear to me that that wasn't something that was going to readily happen with this council. And so, how we address things globally, we might be similarly addressing things locally and vice versa. And so that kind of motivated me to reflect on like, wait, who is making decisions around here and how are they being made? And are we tiptoeing around important issues and kind of scared to state what we see happening, the inequities we see happening in the city and the hard decisions that need to be made. So I was motivated to run based on that, and I'm learning along the way. It's been a wonderful experience.
Great, thank you. Roy, same question.
Hello. Just want to thank you guys. I really appreciate this opportunity. Not much of a public speaker, but I really enjoy getting the practice. It's been very fun. So I've been living in Corvallis for about 3 years. I'm a ecological engineering student at OSU, going into my master's program this school year. I have been working with different groups around Corvallis, care groups and action groups, and have been doing things a lot with the city council, and have found that the city council and our local government have struggled to get things done that we think are very important. And it's not due to a lack of wanting them. I think it's just due to a lack of willpower by many of our city officials. And it's been frustrating. And because of that, I decided to run, and now I'm here. I think we have a lot of great people in our city, including Paul. But I decided that it was important for me to try to take my own action. Things like climate, problems that our city is facing, including climate, housing, our city transparency, and multimodal transportation all require a lot of very urgent action. But they also require a lot of forward thinking 20 years from now. And I'm not really seeing either of those things happen. And I would like to be the person that is able to do that. One of the problems that I've been seeing is people are hesitant to bring up issues that they see and are waiting. And I want to be the person that brings up problems if we're having the city not recognize different racial problems throughout the city. And I want to be able to bring those topics up when our current officials aren't. I'm going to stop there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, next question, and we'll start with Andrea on this one. Housing is on the forefront of the minds and concerns of many residents. What ideas would you bring forward to address housing inventory? And you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. So something I'm learning through this is how much I love subject matter experts to rely on for decision making. Ultimately, I think the role of a city councilor is to bring in the right people to do those assessments and be able to help guide us and to give us options for direction to go. And then we decide based on like our values and our commitments that we've made to the folks who elected us. But from an uneducated opinion around housing, because that is not my expertise, what I see a lot of and what I've witnessed is, I know there are some caps. I know there are some housing, like how many houses a single owner or single like a landlord can own with it before it becomes there's conditions on purchasing another home and for the purpose of just renting it out. But I think being more radical about that, not radical sounds like a extreme word, but like being more intentional about that, like having someone who already owns property, who's already been made their way into that real estate market, being able to buy up multiple homes for the purpose of renting to folks. If we start to put more requirements around subsequent housing purchases that make it more affordable, make it more accessible, that we're not charging per room as if each, 3-bedroom house is three different incomes, but like for families also, because I think that comes up a lot in a college town. But just having some more intentional moderation around property acquirement and what that property is used for and how it can be best shared amongst the diversity of needs in our city.
Thank
Also.
you. Great, thank you. Roy, same question.
I'm also not going to pretend to be an expert. I am going into my master's program with an emphasis on city planning, so I do have some knowledge. I think we have one of our biggest problems, not just in Corvallis, but kind of everywhere, is that we've dedicated so much space to our roads. Most of our residential streets have 4-lane roads, and I think that's a lot of space that could be better used for many other uses, whether it is housing or just green space. So I think trying to find ways of moving traffic to our main roads and converting our residential streets into more usable space rather than just blacktop, I think would go a long ways to improving our infrastructure in Corvallis. I think it's really important that we are prioritizing the dense walkable mixed-use neighborhoods. So making it so people don't have to drive all the way across town if they want to go to the grocery store, so that they can just be walkable and have different types of housing in all of our communities. So not every communities aren't just all one type of housing, like single family homes. I think it adds a lot of beauty to the city rather than just having row after row of the same thing. Another thing that I've noticed recently, especially canvassing in places that are full of apartments, is the number of vacant apartments that you can find. And speaking with people around town, it's not that there's a lack of people trying to get in those apartments, but that they are purposely being left open for one reason or another. And I think that is something we desperately need to take care of, because we have lots of units that are being left empty, and I would like to not see that anymore, because I know how hard it is to find a place to live in Corvallis.
Great, thank you, Roy.
Yeah.
Thank you. All right, Paul, same question. What ideas would you bring forward to address housing inventory?
Okay, I think it's important to start by recognizing Corvallis has a housing problem that goes back decades. The city was not annexing land. The city was not encouraging development. Over the last 2 decades, OSU has grown tremendously and has not provided on-campus housing for most of those students. So this is a hole that took a long time to develop. It's a hole that it's going to take a long time to get out of. I think the city has turned the corner and is doing a lot of good things in terms of housing right now. We've had several annexations over the past few years, including the large one off of West Hills Road that's more than 100 100 acres, ultimately will be something like 2,000 housing units. We've got about 400 units of affordable housing that are online or coming online very soon. The city subsidizes development of those properties, both directly and through waiving system development charges so that it helps keep the price down. We're doing things like mixed-use zoning that is intended to increase the housing supply in places like downtown. The city doesn't have a whole lot of levers it can do on housing. We can't control what landlords do with numbers of units or what they build. There was a development somebody wanted to put in on 36th Street last year for 18 townhomes on a very small parcel of land. It didn't fit the neighborhood, didn't have parking. It would have been, frankly, a bad fit with the neighborhood. But the state has precluded a whole lot of things. The state requires that you can build middle housing on land previously zoned for 1 unit. And I just got the hand wave, so I better stop. I don't want Helen mad at me.
Thank you, Paul. I know you could go on that topic. All right, my next question, and Roy, you'll start with this one. So we'll go Roy, Paul, and Andrea. In January of 2024, the Corvallis point-in-time count of sheltered and unsheltered individuals and families that are experiencing homelessness in Benton County was conducted by Community Services Consortium, showing that the unhoused population is at 420 people in Benton County, with 9.5% of those being homeless youth. What are your views on how we are addressing homelessness in Corvallis? Specifically, what do you believe would be best practice for our community going forward? And Roy, you're up first. And you have 2 minutes.
Thank you. I've been working very closely with a lot of our groups in Corvallis, including Stop the Sweeps and a lot of our shelters, and been finding it very frustrating the way the city is actively making the situation worse. I'm a strong advocate for housing first for many reasons, including that I believe it's the most humane way of helping our houseless community members, because you not only get them off the streets, you get to help them stabilize their lives, but also because it's the most economically viable option in many situations. And study after study has shown that is the case. Getting people into houses lowers the amount that they have, amount of times that they spend in time that they spend in hospitals, amount of times that they get arrested, which are all very expensive for the city and the state. And so I don't see why we haven't been putting there. I know that there's been a lot of time put into this, including one of the hotels being turned into housing. We, as a society, have put a lot of emphasis on shelters, and I think shelters are, in general, very they work in very specific situations. And I think there's a lot of time it doesn't work if you have families or someone with a pet. And I think it's just really important that we work on making small, medium-term housing so people can get off the street and stabilize their lives. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Paul, same question.
Okay. Couple of thoughts. First of all, I would acknowledge that the PIT counts underestimate the number of homeless, so the situation's worse than the number you quoted, unfortunately. Nobody wants sweeps. As a representative of the city, I'm in some way responsible for them happening. Nobody wants them, but the reality is, in part as a health thing, it's sometimes has to happen. The city does support social service organizations that are providing resources to the homeless. A good example would be the Unity Shelter, the Corvallis Daytime Drop-In Center. As far as providing buildings, the city, frankly, you can debate, do we not have the resources or do we not prioritize the resources to build housing? The reality is it's expensive. The other reality is that while the city has provided quite a bit of bricks and mortar, it is not the city's role to provide the social support services that need to come along with physical space. That's a Benton County health issue. And frankly, Benton County is like every other health organization in America. They are scrambling to find adequate staff. And the reality is the need far outstrips the available number of people. I think part of the responsibility lies with the state of Oregon. Talks about putting money into housing, but they're not consistently putting the money for physical space. And so one of the things that we do, that I do personally, is communicate with our legislators to try to ask them to do more in terms of providing the resources for physical space. I'll stop there.
Great. All right. Thank you, Paul. And I'm actually going to ask a follow-up on specifically, share your view with sweeps briefly, yes or no, and tell me why. And let's just go in the same order. We'll go Roy and then Paul and then Andrea. Although, Andrea, did you get a chance to answer? You didn't.
She hasn't yet, no.
Yep, I did it. There we go. Okay, Andrea, same question. Would you like me to repeat it or are you good?
I think I'm good. Thank you.
Okay.
Well, I think it would be important to do an equity analysis of the budget and see where we can borrow money to better support the houseless population in this city. It seems like a tractable number. It seems like a tractable problem that if we truly dedicated and prioritized and reallocated resources, could be at least alleviated, mitigated, especially during, I mean, the rain's coming any day now. I know it keeps getting sunny again, but I know that like when winter and fall come, everybody scrambles to try to, not everybody, but there's a lot more, there's the cold weather shelters and a lot more clothing drives, and that's all coming from us, from the people, volunteers, from mutual aid organizations. And if we reallocated the budget from how much salary is being paid out for these police officers sweeping versus how much could we reallocate to just create a different system that isn't treating people like they're disposable and all their goods are disposable, which ultimately I hear you saying it's like a health issue to some degree, but it's also a health issue, the garbage, the waste, everything that's left behind when these sweeps happen, the amount of environmental impact that has, where we could, instead of paying people to create that destruction, we could be funding creation of infrastructure that, at least minimizes the need for, or that minimizes the frequency of displacement. And again, I think that goes back to kind of what I witnessed on council was like the inequities that we see anywhere, like we're gonna maybe approach them the same everywhere. And so just wanting to really be bold and like redirect and rewrite our priorities that are more in line with values of community and prioritizing people. Okay.
Great, thank you. Now I'm going to circle back around again, a brief response, about 30 seconds. I'd like to ask each of you, share your views on sweeps, yes, no, and why.
I am fairly heavily opposed to sweeps. I think that they heavily impact our houseless community members. These are people's homes that the city is choosing to tear up. We see a lot of the sweeps during times when OSU is having new students, parents come in and they have to make the city pretty. And so we hide our other community members where they're no longer visible. And I think it just pushes the problem off on other people. And rather than making the argument that this is for health reasons, it's not making them healthier by moving them and kicking them out of what stability they have.
Okay, Paul, same question.
Yeah, I will say a couple of things. I don't like sweeps. Some of them happen because of risks to the community, people building fires under a railroad trestle, for instance. I disagree with the notion a moment ago that sweeps are done to hide people when parents are coming to OSU or whatever. That is not the case. These are done I'll say systematically, which makes it sound like a bad thing, but the reality is it's not that there's this massive sweep before mom's weekend or parents' weekend or students coming back or anything else. I think we all wish these people had housing, that they weren't necessary, that nobody was living in the mud.
Great, thank you. And Andrea, 30 seconds.
I do not support sweeps. I think it's dehumanizing, further dehumanizing, and it normalizes the people trying to create a shelter for themselves as the problem, instead of the lack of services and lack of infrastructure and lack of, honestly, kind of compassion. That's the problem, that we need to like focus on that, like sweep out the apathy, like sweep out the budget that isn't serving everyone here. Don't sweep homes, don't sweep temporary shelter. Yeah, I don't see it being any sort of long-term solution.
Great, thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the topic of local business. There is a perception that the downtown is starting to bubble with energy, with downtown business owners updating some existing buildings and the new hotel and retail project on the horizon. If presented with the opportunity to support either an urban renewal district or a tax incremental financial proposal, would you support it? If so, why? If not, why not? You have a minute and a half, and we'll start with Andrea.
Hold on, that sounded like a math problem. Wait, can you repeat a little bit of it? I apologize.
Yes, so
Just the
basically
middle.
it's, what is your view on investing in the downtown businesses with either an urban tax renewal district or with what they call a tax incremental financial proposal, which basically directs funding to help continue to put more investment into downtown development and growth?
I think it would be, I think I'd, again, not super privy to what all of those require or entail, but I would really love to see more diversity around where the hubs are in town. And if we could invest in, you know, having more local businesses in each ward, having more areas where there's development in each ward that brings, still allows for local businesses to pop up, to create energy, but that it's happening across the city and not just, again, localized downtown. I'm super pro like small businesses, local businesses, but diversifying the location. And my understanding is the hotel might be impacting some of the quality of life that we all love about Corvallis on the riverfront. And I don't know a ton about it, but just there's a lot of great neighborhoods and areas to develop as well and bring some local businesses to that I think could,
Great.
That would be what I would like to see.
Great, thank you. Okay, Roy.
I really like what Andrea was saying. One of the things I have been talking about and learning about during this campaign is the importance of community hubs rather than having one big downtown. I think it's incredibly important to have little places where you don't have to go all the way across town to go get your groceries, or I think it makes life easier. Having access to those small businesses is one of the most important ways we can help them. So whether that is making it so that they have access to more locations, or making it so that people can access downtown easier through improving our bus system, or making easier walking access to get to downtown, I think would be a great help. I would vote yes on anything that is helping our local businesses. So I don't know a lot of the details on all of that, but yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Paul.
Yeah, I have a little different perspective in that I think downtown is a critical part of Corvallis. It's one of the things that attracts people to downtown. And let's face it, downtown has problems. There's a lot of empty businesses. The whole small business model has changed, and it's never going to come back like it was, but there are certainly things that can be done. The city has sort of set the stage with some changes in taxes that provide tax breaks for people who build multi-use mixed housing and business. or affordable housing downtown. Um, as far as an urban renewal district, we have the one in Southtown. I have argued for years that we need another one to cover downtown. And I don't quite understand why that hasn't happened, because it's a way to support in a pretty painless way, get some money back into downtown to support a variety of things that will make it more people friendly, which ultimately also means more business friendly and more resident friendly.
Thank you. All right, next question. A financially sustainable community includes a robust business community. What can we do to attract more business or industry to Corvallis? You have 1 minute, and Paul will start with you and go Paul, Andrea, Roy.
Okay. As I mentioned a second ago, downtown and other parts of the city, small businesses are struggling. We can do more to help them. We have done some things through tax incentives. An urban renewal district would help downtown a lot. At a larger scale, Corvallis kind of can't get out of its own way in terms of economic development. We've not been very good at it for quite a while. I will just mention that several large high-tech kinds of businesses have looked at Corvallis and ultimately gone elsewhere. So that means the kind of high-tech jobs that OSU is graduating people to do and that would be mutually interactive with the university haven't come to town. What that also means is that several $100 million worth of facilities didn't get built, and the taxes that would come from those to support all sorts of city programs aren't being collected and won't be. And that's a shame. We could do much better on attracting development. And I don't have time to get into details, but we could do a whole lot more than we have.
Great. Thank you. Okay. Andrea.
Yeah, it's kind of off of Paul's comments. I think it's easy to think of like small businesses as just one-offs downtown, but the more industrial, like tech and other industries, we do have so many innovative and qualified people graduating here, and if there was a way we could be more invested in, startups and small businesses that are specialized in areas that normally maybe a larger industry development, whatever, would require. If we could start investing in more local startups, like having some sort of program, more technical vocational programs, and also having more programs that help fund brilliant folks coming out of these programs. We have so many engineering students graduating, and what they could do without requiring a major impact on a major development, but more just we're employing our people, and we're utilizing the education that's being consumed or created here.
Great. Thank you, Andrea. So I'm going to move over to Roy.
I just think it's really important that we're putting money in the right places. As Paul's been saying, it's been the problem's been slowly getting worse and worse. We've seen closures of many of our fantastic small businesses like Robinette's, which I deeply miss. But yeah, I think we need to do things like those renewal projects. We have to really look at where our money is going and where we can put it to make sure that our small businesses are being supported, because they're so incredibly important. And I don't know a lot of the details, but I want to learn and depend on our people that do know all the details of what needs to happen. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, so let's talk about city infrastructure. The city has a lengthy list of both public works projects and facility maintenance and repairs, and the delayed maintenance has shown up in burst water pipes and office spaces that are outdated and cramped. What process would you use to prioritize projects? And do you have an opinion as to what is most critical to put at the top of the list for action? So you'll have a minute and a half to answer this, and I'm going to start with Andrea and then go to Roy and then Paul.
Okay, well, I think, quality control assessment of where our current infrastructure is at with our buildings. Last time we spoke with when we did a similar conversation, they were asking about the new civic complex and how did we get to this point? Like, why don't we already have some sort of and maybe we do, regular assessment of dealing with architectural and infrastructure issues before they get to the point where we have to raise a building and rebuild from scratch. So having some sort of meaningful, ongoing quality control system for our infrastructure, including obviously a prioritization of that and what is going to impact the most amount of people and the most severely. But I'm sure that's built in. I don't know where it went awry in terms of our city hall and those buildings, but I would just want to make sure there's someone on quality control.
And
And
do you have an opinion of what you would put at the top of the list?
I mean, water is life, right? So I guess making sure our water pipes and our water is always prioritized in my mind.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Okay, Roy, same question.
On the note of the city the civic campus, I do think it's incredibly important that we have our city staff being taken care of and in comfortable positions. I don't know if having to build a whole new building is the only way that is possible. But I'd want to make sure that is being prioritized. And if there are other ways of doing it, I think those need to be prioritized over building a new campus. I know that looking through the city budget, about 8%, I believe the number is 8% of the city budget goes to maintaining and building new streets. And I think that is a huge number that could go somewhere else. The city is already needs to increase that number by 13% if it wants to keep up with maintenance, and that's not going to happen. The city does not have the budget to maintain its roads, and I think we need to reprioritize and figure out how we want our streets to look, because right now our city streets are costing the city a huge amount of money, and I would like to make it so that is no longer happening. We need to make sure that we're not building new infrastructure unless we have the means to take care of it. If we're building new things, there should be money already in place to take care of it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Paul.
Yeah, I'll start by saying my biggest priority is infrastructure. We need to be able to assume that when we turn a tap, we get safe water to drink. And when we flush the toilet, it goes away to someplace and is appropriately processed. Our infrastructure has been sliding downhill, and council will, in the near future, probably approve some service fee increases to reverse that trend. As far as facilities, the city put lots of money into services and put effectively no money into buildings for a long time, and the bill for that has come due. A facilities assessment was started a couple of years ago. We've already seen results of that in rebuilding 2 of our ancient fire stations, and we just Monday night approved in concept building a new parks staff and maintenance facility. The one that we have is dilapidated beyond reason. Of the things yet to be built, the things sort of on the priority list are the civic campus that got mentioned, a new police station, and a fire station in Southtown is on some people's list, not everybody. I think the Southtown Fire Station would be my highest priority, simply because in case of a flood or an emergency, there's nothing else for people in that part of town. My second would be a police building. They're cramped in space that they share with Benton County. And then the civic campus. Um, Not to say that we do not need a new city hall, but I think it's a lesser priority than the others.
Right, thank you. All right, we're going to dig a little deeper into the civic campus, but just a 30-second response. So this, as you've been hearing, the city is exploring building a new civic campus to replace City Hall, council meeting chambers, municipal court, possibly the fire station. What's your view of the necessity for new facilities, and how would you approach getting it paid for? And again, 30 seconds, we'll shorten this one because you all have addressed it, and we'll start with Roy, and then go to Paul, and then Andrea.
I'll keep it short. If we find that that is absolutely required, which it's my knowledge sounds like it's getting there, then we may need to do that. We need to. I do highly encourage the Southtown Fire Department. Our Southtown community needs to be taken care of as much as anywhere, and yeah, I'm gonna leave it there. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Paul.
Yeah, I think all of the buildings on the list merit replacement. As I said, Civic Campus was lowest on my list, but the current City Hall is cramped. HVAC is bad. ADA accessibility is horrible. There's a lot of things that make it a place that ought to be replaced. The challenge, of course, is funding to build a new fire station, a new police station, and City Hall is somewhere north of $100 million. And we don't have that kind of money lying around. We could not fund that without tax increases. And that's why the debate is whether to build. They would be funded almost certainly through general obligation bonds, which would be approved by a vote of the people if it was to happen.
Thank you. And Andrea.
Yeah, I think anything we're spending that much money on, I would want to see how it's serving us and whether there's a way to reallocate some of those funds to actually meet the underlying need. Like how many of those people in the civic campus building would be actually working on issues like homelessness that we could maybe address by parceling out some of those funds to create some long-term solution for homelessness. So I would just want it to serve more than, obviously employees need to be in a safe building. We also have remote work as an amazing option. But yeah, just that it had multi-purpose.
Okay, great. All right, one more question in this section before we transition over to Steve's lightning round. Water bill fees on water bills. This is a topic of conversation with residents who have seen the fees continue to increase on their water bills. How would you balance the need for the city to generate revenue with the impact of these increasing costs of living for homeowners and renters? You have 2 minutes. We'll go Paul, Andrea, and then Roy.
Okay. I'll start by saying the phrase water bills is pretty obsolete. We charge for a lot of other services on them, and I hope people could use the phrase service bills because that's really what they are. Two things about them. First of all, property taxes are capped, so service fees are the only place that we can increase revenue for the most part without passing things like special levies. Service fees also are important in that probably something around half the assessed value of land in Corvallis is not taxable. OSU, the hospital, schools, federal buildings. And service fees are the only mechanism by which the city draws any income at all from those organizations. They're not close to, frankly, paying their fair share of the cost of the services they use. As I think I said a little bit ago, we almost certainly will be increasing service fees for infrastructure effective early in 2025. Nobody likes them going up, but as I say, that's the only way we can get money. And in this case, they're being allocated. They will go up with inflation for most things, water. I mean, for most services. The increases above and beyond that will be to, as I mentioned earlier, reverse the gradual decline in the reliability of our water and sewer and street systems. So
Great,
I
thank you.
think that's enough said.
Great, thank you. Andrea?
Yeah, it's pretty horrifying to have to pay. The only way to pay for my water is to pay for police. And to link those two just seems so harmful. And I mean, I drink water every day. I avoid police every day. I don't interact with the police on a regular basis. They are not a vital part of my daily life. Water is, I would say a lot of the infrastructure is as well. Police being included in that bill, it hurts me every single month when I have to pay that. And I know some people feel the same. Water is so generous. I know it's not charging us more. Why are we like, if my water bill is going up so that we can hire more police officers or increase salaries for policing, it just makes me very frustrated. And like Roy was saying, if we're going to create something, like figure out how to fund it without requiring us, if this is the only way to raise funds, then maybe we need to revisit like the services we're providing and how we can maybe, you know, I'm a big fan of community police, like restorative justice programs, other alternatives besides just cops and our water mixed together just feels very wrong and unsustainable. So.
Okay, thank you. Roy, same question, 2 minutes.
As a renter, I know living usually paycheck to paycheck, how hard it is to pay bills like that. Going up for those bills going up for many people would be a huge detriment. And because of that, it needs to be considered very, very carefully. We need to be really careful what infrastructure we are setting up so that we, in the future, if these bills may need to come up now because the city hasn't planned out as well in the future as it needed to. But I think it's incredibly important that we make sure our future planning is considering this and making sure we don't have to keep increasing things, because those little things definitely add up. And I think future planning, making sure that everything that we're doing is funded, would go a long way. I think I'm going to leave it there. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you all for your thoughtful responses. We're now going to move over to Steve Schultz with the final set of questions.
Thank you, Helen. And for candidates, so that you're aware, these questions are going to proceed just a little bit differently. You're going to get somewhere between a minute and 30 seconds. And the minute I think I've got an answer from you, we're going to move right on. In other words, I'll probably interrupt you so we can just kind of keep it moving. There's more questions than time. Okay. Actually, I'm going to move the order of these questions a little bit. I'm going to dovetail with what Helen just wrapped up with, which is these levies, these service fees. Do these strike you as being a regressive tax? I'm going to start with you, Paul Schaefer.
Some of them are flat fees. For instance, the police and fire fee is a flat fee. It is bigger for multi-unit buildings that are hooked onto one service line. Water, sewer, stormwater, on the other hand, those amounts in those fees are based on usage. So
Right,
the
and
more
what I
water
guess
you use, the more you pay. And in that sense, You could argue that it's regressive because you pay the same amount regardless of your income, but it's a fair way of billing because you're paying for the services and
What about these levies? For instance, if you're somebody who's been living in your house for 30 years and there's a levy, maybe you're on a fixed income versus the up and comer that's, 40, 45 years old, they're bringing in money. Um, but the levy may impact you similarly, in terms of actual dollars, but quite disproportionately, given you're on a fixed income and the folks across the street aren't. Does that strike you, yes or no, as regressive, Paul Schaefer?
I look at them as the levy amounts are based on property value, just like your other property taxes are. Um, are they regressive in the sense that two people have a house worth the same amount of money and one of them has higher income than the other? In that case, of course, they're regressive. But there's not a really straightforward, fair way of resolving that. Um,
And then similarly, or rather, same two questions really. I'm going to go ahead to Andrea.
Yeah, I was gonna ask how these amounts are determined, if it's based off your water bill or if it's just always a flat fee for these services. So if it is regressive, then I do think like an equity analysis of that would be really helpful and being able to kind of, I mean, I'll happily pay for fire services. Also, I know I keep digging on the cops, but like if there's a way um we could adjust that
Okay.
income
So,
based on renters, based on, whatever your situation is. I think that would
okay.
make more sense.
So you do see them as regressive and would like to address the regressivity through some sort of equity analysis. Am I
If
kind of
that is the case,
fairly?
it
Okay,
is, if they are regressive, if they are like the same for everyone, then I hear that maybe they're the same based on your property value. But as a
right,
tenant, your property value kind of isn't representative of your income. It's representative of your landlord's um
right.
purchase.
Okay. So,
I
okay,
guess.
I think I've got it. Okay, Roy?
I definitely agree that any flat fee is going to be aggressive. I think it's really complicated and dependent on a situation by situation basis. And I think it's important that we are taking considerations for who is being affected with what by doing analyses. Yeah,
Okay.
I don't think I have a lot more to say than that. Thank you.
Okay, good.
Steve,
Okay,
can I just interject something really quick here?
I'll
That,
give you about 15 seconds.
yeah, the city has looked at a payroll tax or considered it as a way of charging that's based obviously on income. It would be a percent of income.
Mhm.
Um, it's not been very successful when it's been put on the ballot other places. Eugene has it. Salem tried it last year and it got 13% favorable vote. So
I know.
probably
Okay,
not an alternative we can go to.
and since you brought it up, I'll ask for a response on that from Andrea and from Roy. Andrea, about 15, 20 seconds
To
to respond to
supplement,
what Mr. Schaefer just commented.
yeah, to supplement the service bill with payroll tax, is that what you're?
Right. What do you think of the idea of payroll tax? As much as I guess Eugene's got it, and yeah, quite almost infamously, the Salem proposal went down in flames last year.
I'd be curious how it's going in Eugene. Would like to learn more about that. And also, but I do think, if we're to the point of, if there's not a budget for it, let's not offer it yet. If we haven't
Okay.
figured out how to fund it, why
Roy,
figure that out?
to you.
I can't say whether or not I would support it without looking at our other local communities and seeing why it did or didn't work, and seeing how it is doing in Eugene.
Okay, good. Let me go ahead and move us along. and I will start with, I'll move to this instead. So Andrea, I'll let you be first on this one. A number of the candidates have stated they'd like to see the city of Corvallis divest from companies that do business with or that are home based in Israel. Is that something that you support, Andrea Bybee?
Yes, wholeheartedly. I think that's something we all probably support. It's just very confusing in our little brains sometimes to um separate the two things. But if we want to live in a city that's free from apartheid and free from investments in apartheid, then I think we would all agree.
Okay.
Hopefully we all
Okay.
want that. Then we
Okay,
would have
I'm gonna move, okay, and then, Roy, you? Same
I
question.
very much advocate for separating ourselves from the war in Israel,
Okay.
at least on a financial
Um,
level.
and then Paul Schaefer, same question, divestiture from investments in Israeli companies or companies that do business with Israel.
It's a non-issue because I checked with the city finance department. We do not have any investments with Israel-based companies. You can go online and look. Most of our investments are very conservative. About 2/3 of our portfolio is in
Okay, real
government
good.
securities, actually.
Okay, great. Okay, I think I got it. And I guess, I'm gonna go back and start with you, Roy. The Charlotte Ellis matter, does that strike you that it's been a good investment of city resources and time? And specifically city council time, but staff time as well. Roy?
A good
30 seconds.
investment of resources, absolutely not. I believe the number was 180,000 last time I heard. That has been spent on lawyer fees for that. I know Charlin very well, and I think it's
Okay, I think I
ridiculous.
got it.
Thank you.
I think our viewers have it rather. And then Paul, you as well.
Yeah, I can't say a whole lot about it
Well,
because
just whether you
conceivably
think it
it
was a
comes
good
in
use.
front of council. I voted against hiring an outside attorney. So had I been in the majority, that money would have never have been spent. I
So has this
don't, I
been
am
a good
not
use
in
of,
favor.
and then aside from the fees, has it been a good use of time?
No.
Okay. And then Andrea.
I agree with Paul and Roy. No, I don't think it's good use of resources or time.
Okay, great. Okay, gonna move along to noise ordinances. So about a month or two back, just during public comments, woman got up, said, "Hey, these folks, they put an air conditioning compressor right outside my window, about a foot outside my window, and I now have to hear this really loud machine all day and night in right outside my bedroom window." She says about a foot outside her bedroom window. And I guess the question gets to be is if we do not have ordinances that restrict the decibels permitted for such a thing, should we have them? And should we be requiring a permit to install these things so that the noise levels can be approved or not? And I'm going to start with that part of the question because I think it's the most salient. And I'm going to go ahead and start with Paul on that one.
Okay. City has a noise ordinance. It's pretty useless because it's non-specific about, um, for instance, decibels, time of day kinds of things that would make it a useful ordinance. We hear this on the air conditioners. We hear it about leaf blowers and other things.
Would you like to entertain a beefed up ordinance?
I would support a better ordinance. The tricky thing that comes with a better ordinance is how do you enforce it? Who enforces it? Because it requires staff time. And let's face it, if somebody calls about a noisy leaf blower, by the time anybody from police livability can go check it out, the person's probably done and
Right
or
now,
moved
the
on.
AC
And
is
so
not going anywhere, so that's
the
easy to.
AC case, that should be subject to inspection and to noise levels.
Mhm.
most of the things we hear complaints about with noise, like I said, leaf blowers are the classic in Corvallis. Um, it would be very challenging to enforce an ordinance for those things.
Good. Okay, moving right along, I'm gonna go ahead to Roy on this one. Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna go to Roy on this one.
I think that the noise of Corvallis has a lot to do with how happy people are and how pleasant it is to live here. So yes, I would support anything that we can actually do to lower the noise and make it more livable, whether that's an AC or making it so our roads are not as loud and from one manner or another. Thank you.
Okay, I'm gonna move along. And then, right, Andrea, question for you too. Noise ordinance.
Yeah, I think revisiting the noise ordinance to Paul's point of enforcing it, I think that could be tricky, but I really see it being like kind of like community, building more community and opportunity for that, maybe having an ombuds person to like serve to help with conflict resolution around stuff like that that comes up. Um but yes, noisy cars is a real big issue in our ward, I would say. I live right off Grant, and people racing or whatever it is, it's so loud at night. And a lot of the people I spoke with before running were like, how do we deal with that? And we were brainstorming, fantasizing about like decibel meters instead of just speed limit monitors. But I think it is important
Right
to
now,
bring
the
that
woman
in.
that got in front of council, she specifically brought up AC. It's an AC compressor. It's right outside our window. You believe that having some kind of decibel limitation requirement with inspection and enforcement is a good idea in that instance?
For an AC, no, I do not think that would be as effective as like vehicles, if that's at all possible.
Okay,
I think
good,
that's
got
more
it.
of an ombuds issue if we had
Okay,
one.
got it. Let's see, and then I'm gonna move to Andrea. I'll go ahead and start with you on this one. Um, a number of the candidates in their candidate statements have talked about tenant rights. What is that? What are the ones you would concentrate on? And what do you think that you would do to pursue having the city perhaps enhance those? Andrea, I'm going to give you about 60 seconds.
Um, I mean, it's a basic tenant rights would include, I mean, I think it kind of is comparable to like stop the sweeps. It's like just treating people with dignity and treating people like this is their home, this is where they live. And having not treating housing like a commodity. I know it is treated that way, but it's a need. It's a necessity, basic right, basic, or I mean, it's not officially a basic right. It should be, but it's a basic need. So treating it accordingly and subsidizing and supporting tenants as much as possible. Once people are in housing, doing whatever we can to support them staying housed. I don't have a list of specific rights, but bringing that approach is what I would
Let me
do.
go ahead and move over to Roy. Same question.
Some of the groups I'm working with have brought up ideas like the Tenants Bill of Rights, which I support. I think it's important for tenants to have recognized rights. On another level, I've heard a lot of tenants complaining that when they have major problems and maintenance requests, that they're not being taken care of. I've heard people who don't have hot water for months at a time or don't have water at all. And I think it's really important that we hold our landlords that are not keeping up with maintenance responsible, which I know the city has a path to do that, but from what I understand, it is not being done properly.
Paul Schaefer.
Yeah, there are tenants' rights locally and at the state level about a variety of issues, about evictions, about rent increases, and so on. The state has usurped a lot of the authority from communities for that. I would say, in response to Roy's comment, if somebody doesn't have heat or water, um, they should be contacting either community development or the police non-emergency line to get the livability unit to go after these things, because people have a lease. It says what they're entitled to. And if they're in violation of the lease, then they should be entitled to some relief,
You know,
and they should be
while I
entitled to
have you on the
support.
subject, does the city still have a rental specialist? It used to be Bob Lowen, I think, or Rick Lowen. I can never remember his first
I
name.
honestly can't answer that. I
Okay,
don't know,
great.
Steve. Sorry.
Okay, good. Does anybody else here know? Okay. So I'm gonna go ahead and move to the next question. This will be the last one before closing. Recently we had a situation come up where Corvallis Clinic was taken over by Optum. And obviously the city council doesn't get a vote on that. Also, obviously, this has the potential for really impacting the livability of our community, the well-being of our citizens. In an instance like that, where you don't get a direct vote, but your citizens are going to be impacted, your constituents are going to be impacted, how would you approach trying to impact that circumstance in a constructive way? I will start with you, Roy. About 30, 45 seconds.
I think it's important that we make sure that the right people are being able to make these decisions. I don't know if I have any direct solutions off the top of my head here, but making sure that things like that are being carefully considered in the future would be great.
Okay, Andrea?
I mean, ideally, I agree with Roy, and also we'd be creating infrastructure for subsidizing healthcare for our local residents, that we aren't having to
Not just
either
healthcare, any issue that
either take Optum.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Not just healthcare, any issue.
Any issue, but anything that's like being taken over because it's either this or nothing, then we need to subsidize that and create a local solution that isn't, hurting people feeling like, oof, I didn't want to say yes to this, but I had to because otherwise Corvallis Clinic is gone. We got to figure out like a way to subsidize that, I think.
Paul Schaefer.
Supplement.
Yeah, I will say that the whole Corvallis Clinic and the whole breakdown between the clinic and Samaritan affected me personally on my insurance choices and the cost of insurance. So, like a lot of other people in this town, I have a personal stake in it. Unfortunately, um, the decisions whether to allow such, I guess I'll call it a merger or takeover, are made at a higher level at the state and federal level. We have almost no ability to affect it other than to complain to our legislators. That's sort of the only path we have at this point that has much promise to have any effect at all.
Okay, we're going to move to closing statements. I'm going to give you each about 45 seconds, 60 seconds. Given who's been in the order of what, I am going to go ahead and actually start with Andrea.
Okay, well, thank you all for participating in this conversation, for hosting this. Helen and Steve, I'm here as just getting involved in local government and creating more choices and options for folks. I just think it's important to stay connected to the evolving issues that are coming our way and figuring out innovative solutions. So thank you
Paul
for
Schaefer. Thank you. Paul Schaefer.
Yeah, there you go, unmuted. Okay. Again, yeah, I want to thank you, Steve and Helen, and your organizations for hosting this, and Andrea and Roy for running. It's a good thing for local government to have multiple candidates. When I first ran for council several years ago, I said a couple of things that are still true. My only goal is to represent Ward 7 in the city of Corvallis and the community. I don't have other ambitions politically. I don't have hidden agendas or special agendas. What you see is what you get. I offer to the voters experience, 5 years on council. I'll note that my fellow councilors have enough faith in me that they elected me council president this year. I've had a lot of experience in my previous lives with contentious people and groups. I spent years working with tribal people and federal agencies together in a group where we had to have consensus or nothing happened at all. That's a pretty high hurdle to try to find common ground. And I have a lot of experience with complex issues, of which the city is frankly getting more and more. Um, I hope I have the trust of the people in the ward and the community. I would appreciate your vote, but more than voting for me, please, please, please vote in November for city council and for every other office that's on the ballot. It matters a whole lot this year.
Thank you, Paul Schaefer. Roy Rubin.
I've been in Corvallis about 3 years, and I've really been looking to make a place where I can stay for a long time. And I saw a need in Corvallis for action and people to do things. And I think that I am one of those people that has the opportunity to step up and help our city out. And I would like to be able to help out the community that I am a part of and grow my roots here. I'm really, yeah. Thank you all. I appreciate you guys taking the time to put all this together and joining this meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Roy Rubin, Paul Schaefer, and Andrea Bybee, candidates for Ward 7's Corvallis City Council. Also, thank you to my co-moderator, Helen Higgins. I also want to thank the staff, volunteers, subscribers, donors, and sponsors that make these debates possible. The Advocate plans to issue their endorsements on October 25. City Club makes no endorsements, however, concerning candidates or issues and focuses only on presenting a constructive community dialogue. The two organizations are separate organizations. And to you, the viewer, we appreciate your interest in the upcoming election, and we remind you that ballots need to either be dropped or postmarked by November 5. Have a good evening. Thank you.